time to create and configure our API test suite. When we bootstrapped Codeception, the command generated the 3 standard test suites. To keep things clean, let's create a new test suite to handle our API tests. So to do this, open your terminal and run the command vendor bin codecept. Let's expand this. Okay, so we can see that we have generate commands and we also have a generate suite command. And that's the one we need to use. So we're going to type vendor bin codecept. Then we're going to type generate, if I can spell this correctly, generate suite. And we're going to name our suite API. So notice that Codeception has created our suites and it's actually telling us what our next steps are. The next step we need to complete is editing our api.suite.yml. You can find that in tests. Let's open that up. You can see we already have helper API, which is actually a helper file that Codeception would have created for us. As you know, it's a YAML file, so be careful with tab indentations. So what we need to do is define the modules we want to enable. The first module we can enable is asserts. Next, we're going to do REST, and we need to configure URL, which is the URL of the application. In this case, it's going to be local REST api.com. Next is depends, and we're going to say PHP browser. Now we can move on to enabling our Laravel module. Notice that it says Laravel 5, but that's okay. It's Laravel 5 and upwards. We have to then define our environment file, which is .env.testing. Now I know that does not exist yet, but we'll create it in a second. Next, we need to define parts, set it to ORM. Next is cleanup. We need to enable this to true. Then run database migrations. We need to set this to true as well. Okay, so that does it for the configuration for our test suite. Everything should be good. Just be careful once again about those indentations. And I'm just double checking mine. That looks all good. So next, let's create the env.testing file. But first, let's make sure that my actual app URL for the normal env matches the URL here. Okay, so that's fine. Let's copy the .env. And we're going to paste it back here and call it .env.testing. Okay, so now let's update this to local. I guess I made that mistake in a few places. I know you saw that. Okay, it looks good there. And yep, there's a mistake here as well. Fix up that typo. Okay, so that looks good to me. Now we have our suite defined and we also have our env.testing. Let's run vendor bin codecept and build. If this successfully runs, then we can assume that our test suite and our configuration for our test suite works as well. So now we can just commit our files. And let's make sure we're committing everything here. So we have helper, which is api.php, and API tester, which is a actor. Now we have api.suite.yml, that's good. Our message is going to be add API test suite, commit. And that's it for configuring our test suite.